understand, so what is difference between a library and a framework? So you need to understand the difference between a library and framework. So what is library and what is framework? Let's see a simple overview. I will explain a simple flow to understand the difference between library and framework. Actually, so we are building some application, and this is a web application. So we are building some web application. And in this web application, we are using a library. We are using a library. So we are building application by using any library. We are building application using a library here. So if you are building any application using library, what happens is, in the first step, generally when you request this application, so it loads the static DOM. It loads the static DOM. Static DOM is nothing but the HTML document object model. Whatever the page that you designed, that page loads into your browser. So when you request that application, it loads static DOM. Static DOM is the document object model designed in your index page. After loading the static DOM, next what it happens here is it loads the static DOM. After loading the static DOM, what it is going to do is it is going to load the library. It loads static DOM. After that, it loads the library. So whatever library you have, you have integrated, whatever library you are using, it loads that library. So you request an application. Application will load the static DOM. After loading the static DOM, it will load the library. After loading the library, actually, the library is loaded into memory. But what is problem is, generally we call as the library, this library is passive. The library is passive. That means the library that is loaded into memory is not active. Library is not active. So you requested an application, it loads the DOM. After loading the DOM, it loads the library. After loading the library is not active, it is passive. And if library is not active, that means your application is not responding. Your application will not respond to your interactions. Only presentation is there. Now to make the library active, in order to make this library active, what we have to do is, actually, we need to use events. That means application uses events to make the library active. It uses events to make the library active. That means we need to use different kinds of events, like what? On load, on click, on change, on blur. Like that, we need to use specific events. By using the events, we have to make the library active. And once the library is active, now the static DOM is converted into dynamic DOM. It is converted into dynamic DOM. And once it is converted into dynamic DOM, that means now your application starts responding to your interactions. Your application starts responding to your interactions. So this is the approach of a library. So in computer programming technologies, when you are building any application using a library, so first when you request that application, it loads the static DOM. After loading the static DOM, it loads the library. After loading the library is not active because library is just a set of functions which you can use to implement certain functionality. And to invoke those functions and make them active, you need some events. By using these events, the library becomes active. Once the library is active, now the static DOM is converted into dynamic DOM so that now it starts interacting with you. This is the nature of a library. And of course, in React.js, you learned that React will not use the actual DOM. So what it uses, React will not use the actual DOM. You already learned in React, it uses the virtual DOM. So a library can build application, but it cannot control the application flow. To control the application flow, you have to use a framework. You have to use framework. Now let's see how the framework actually works, how the concept of a framework works. For example, now we are building a web application. So we are building a web application and this web application is using library. Previously, it is built using a library. Now this time we are using a framework. So we are using a framework. So technically, framework is a set of libraries. A framework can control the application flow. So now what happens is when you build a library, when you build app with library, you saw the passive mechanism. Now when you build an application with the framework, then what happens is first step, it loads the static DOM. That is common. After loading the static DOM, what it is going to do is after loading the static DOM, it loads the framework into memory. It the framework, loads the framework into memory. Once the framework is loaded into memory, actually the framework is active. The framework loaded into memory and the framework is active. When framework is active, it takes control over the application. That means framework is active. When framework is active, that means it takes control over the application. That means automatically it is going to convert the static DOM into the dynamic DOM. It is active and it is going to convert the static DOM into dynamic DOM. So what is difference between a library and a framework? A library will allow you to build an application, but it cannot control the application flow. Means how to start the application, from where to access the data, how do we navigate from one location to another. So how we manage data binding interactions and all. However, in your React.js, you learned about state management. You learned about routing like techniques. Actually, they are the features of a framework. but React is not purely a framework. React is a library for building interfaces for web and native apps. So it have some features which looks like a framework. That is the reason sometimes you might have seen people saying React as a framework, but officially it is not a framework. It is a library. So a library alone cannot build an application. And you know that React have a routing mechanism, have a state management mechanism. But if you have observed, routing is managed in React not implicitly. To manage routing in React, you have to implement a third party, that is a plugin. What is that plugin? So is React having routing implicitly? React is not having routing implicitly. React have to implement routing by using an external library, that is React Router DOM. And React have to maintain a state management library separately like Redux. Like Redux. Yeah, good. So technically, React is having certain features of a framework, but not implicitly it is a framework. You have to explicitly add them. That is the reason React is never a framework. React is a library. But a framework have the ability to handle the com- complete application flow. That means it includes features like routing. It includes features like state management. It includes features like server side rendering. So a framework is responsible for handling that. So technically, React is a library. It can build application. It can build application, but cannot control the application flow. Control the application flow. So Next.js is a framework. Next.js is a framework. So it can build and control the application flow. Control the application flow. Actually, every technology needs a framework. Every technology needs a framework. For example, Java. Through Java, you can build application, but you cannot control the application flow. You need frameworks like Spring, Hibernate, microservices. So Python is a language. To control the application flow, it requires Django, Flask, like frameworks. So .NET have languages like C Sharp, and it needs framework like ASP.NET, ASP.NET MVC, like frameworks. So PHP requires frameworks like Code Igniter, Cake PHP. So through React, you will learn how to build a simple interface, a very interactive interface. And Next.js is going to teach you how you can build a complete application. So now the concept here is you need to understand what is Next.js. What is Next.js? So what is the concept of this Next.js? What is Next.js? Actually, you need to know that. So technically, as I explained already, Next.js is a React framework. It is a React framework. So through this framework that helps you to build fast, scalable, and production ready, web applications. It is a React framework. By using this framework, you can build a production ready web application. As I already explained you, we cannot build an app with React alone. To build an application, you need a support of frameworks. So you can build React application. So you can control the application flow by using a framework like Next.js. So what are the key features? That means what are the features of Next.js? Means what are its abilities? So what are the specialty of this Next.js? One important feature is file-based routing. As I told you, in React, you need to explicitly implement routing mechanism. But in a framework, this routing is implicitly configured. It is already configured. Just define, you need to define the file system for your application. Automatically routes are ready. You have to define the file system for your application. The routes are automatically ready. That means what is meaning of file-based routing is you just configure the file system. What is advantage? You just configure the file system. Routing is implicitly configured. Routing is implicitly configured. I will show you practically how this happens. That means you don't need to manually configure the routes. You just create the file system, automatically routing is defined. For example, I created a folder like suppose fashion, and in that folder we have a page.js. I will explain how to create that. Then automatically, that means this is the file. This is the file, and automatically the file related route will be slash fashion, and this is its route. And automatically what happens here is, so in this route, page.js is startup. Automatically it starts and it renders. So that means you don't need to configure routing explicitly, just like you have done in your React. You just create the file system, routing is implicitly configured. That is the ability of a framework. So framework gets you all the features which are responsible for building and controlling the application flow. So one of the key feature of Next.js is file-based routing. Another important feature is server-side rendering. So we call as SSR, and also static site generation. This is SSG. So what is the concept of server-side rendering? The concept of server-side rendering is nothing but pages can be pre-rendered on the server. So you can pre-render the pages on the server. That means pages are already rendered. Usually what happens, it uses a JIT mechanism. JIT mechanism means what? Just in time. Just in time means when you request a page, that page will be rendered into your browser. You already learnt HTML parsing in your general web technologies. How HTML is parsed in the browser, you have learned that. So it is rendered when you request that particular page. But what is the advantage of server side rendering is, and what is static site generation advantage is, the pages are pre-rendered. Already pages are rendered and they are ready to display. Whenever you request them, they will display. What is advantage of this is they have faster user interface. That means interactive, faster in responding. Actually, React itself is faster. Now, when you add Next with React, then it becomes more faster. Not only that, that means what is advantage of this is pages can be rendered on server. So this makes applications faster in rendering. it is very fast in rendering and resulting, giving you the results. Actually, it improves the performance, and it is very SEO friendly, search engine friendly. That is one great advantage of static site generation and server side rendering. On the server, the pages are pre-rendered and static pages are configured at the time of building the application. Whenever user requests, it will render it faster. It will not render when user requested. It is already pre-rendered. That is the mechanism of server side scripting, server side rendering and the static site generations. Another important feature is it has API routes. API routes. You can build not only the front end. What is the specialty of React? It React with Next. Next allows you to build a complete full stack application. You can build the front end and back end in a full stack application. So if you have built any application using, if you have built any application interface using React, when you practiced that, usually one of the main issue is we need some backend database and configure the API routes and all. Then we use a server side technology like Node or Java or PHP. By using those technologies, what you do is you need to separately host your application. You need to separately run that application. We need to separately configure the server side routes. But what is the specialty of Next.js is it is built in with both client side and server side. That means you can configure inbuilt API endpoints. That means you can build backend endpoints in same app. That means both client side and server side routes are configured. That means you can build a complete full stack application using this Next. So API endpoints can be configured implicitly. Another feature is it have built in CSS and SAS support. And of course, you people already know what is SAS. So it has built-in support for CSS and SAS. That means what is the specialty? It supports CSS module systems so that you can easily import and reuse the modules across the locations. And it supports SAS. SAS, you know that what is SAS? What is the purpose of SAS? What it is called as? I hope you all people know about it. What is SAS called as? What is SAS called as? So SAS is syntactically awesome style sheets, but what is SAS? SAS is a language. So what is it? Is a language for CSS, right? It is a language for CSS. And what is advantage of this SAS is it optimizes lot of CSS logic that you need to write regularly to handle complex interactions. Yeah, it is a CSS preprocessor. Very good, right? It is a CSS preprocessor. So it have built-in support for SAS and CSS. Not only that, another important feature is image optimization. Image optimization is also one of the key feature of Next.js. So what it can do is it can automatically optimize images. That means it will compress the images and make the application faster in rendering when especially it is using lot of images. That means automatically optimizes images using an image component. It have a image component. By using that, it can optimize. It improves the performance of application. Improves performance of application. It improves the performance of application, especially when you are using so a lot of images in your application. And as I said, because of server side rendering and static side generation, it is fast in refreshing the content. Fast refresh. That means it is like preloaded. That means you will not see that it is just like loading. It implicitly uses a lot of SX. So it is better and faster. So technically, another important feature here is it implicitly uses a middleware system. A middleware system. What is advantage of that middleware system is, so it will run your code, handles the communication, and it easily manages the complete application flow. So technically, these are some important features. What are the key features of Next.js? That means you can build a complete full stack application using Next.js with React on the top. That is the concept of how this Next.js works. So in this workshop, I am going to show you how a simple Next application works. Because see, Next.js framework is a big concept to understand. Here we will learn how it helps our React to implement a end-to-end application. That is our aim in this workshop, to understand and handle. So let's see one simple basic interaction, how to create a Next application and how it works. So what is the relation between React and Next.js? So React will build an interactive user interfaces, and Next is a framework that allows you to build a complete end-to-end application with UI and backend. So the UI is supported through React, and the backend Next.js provides implicit libraries for it. It manages all the API endpoints in the backend so that you can create a complete end-to-end application. So actually, so when you officially see the React dev, you see, when you see the official React dev, generally people call React, sometimes we have seen people calling React as a framework, but officially it is not a framework. What it is, actually React is a library for web and native user interface. So libraries can build, but they cannot control the flow. So that is the reason, to build an application, you need a support of frameworks. For example, I will go into this and show you. So technically, when you are dealing with React, so you need various frameworks. That means these are all applications here, right? Means already you know this. I will give a simple point here. Yeah. So you can see that this is generally, so this is generally the React environment, and you see it provides all the components and all these, all these, how the components will work. But what is the concept here is, you need to make this React application so more interactive, so and handle the complete full stack. Then let's see how it manages. What is the framework we are using here? The framework we are using is Next.js. So this is Next.js, and Next.js, so it is a React framework for the web. So what is the specialty of this framework? Already I explained the scenario. So React is not a framework. So you better say Next.js is a React framework for building web applications. and native applications also we can build, but native application requires so additional mobile frameworks to use, right? So technically it is a React framework. So React is not a framework. Next.js is a React framework. That's the difference you need to understand. So people get confused about this and they say it React framework. React is not a framework. React framework is Next.js. Next.js is a React framework. So let's see how we can build a simple application with React and Next.js, a complete end-to-end application. How do we build? Let's see the simple flow. So set up environment and create. So React Next application. So how do we create a React Next application? The process I will show here. React Next.js application. How we can build that. First, important. So because you people already know how to build applications and you already learned the technologies. So what is the basic point is, first, make sure that you have installed Node.js on your PC. That is the basic thing. Node.js and you need requires Node 14 plus versions. Make sure that you actually latest version of Node.js is 20x version. Make sure that the so Node.js that is installed on your PC is 14 and above, then you can use it. Another, we are going to use Visual Studio Code Editor. Visual Studio Code Editor for building the application, managing our application. We are going to use Visual Studio Code Editor. So now these two already you people have, because you are coming from the background of web designing, you people already have, but just make sure that you are using Node, the version above 14. So you can check that from your terminal. From your command terminal, you can check by using node flag v, it will get you the version. Currently, my version is 22.14. So that is good. That is the latest version I have in my device. Make sure that you are using 14 and higher version. Okay, once you set up your node and set up your Visual Studio Code editor, now how to create a next application? So go to any PC location, go to any PC location. So using command prompt and run the command. You have to run the command. So any location on your computer, some D drive, E drive. So you have to run the command npx create next app at the latest. This is the command you need to run. Npx create next app at the latest. So that is the command you need to define. So that is the command you need to configure. So here you can optionally define the app name. So it will create an app with that particular name, or you can just hit enter without the app name. App name is optional. So it is optional. No need to define that. If you just run npm next app, create next app, it is going to set up a application for you by asking you what you want in that application step by step. So let's run this and see. So what I'm doing is in my PC, I will open some location on my PC in through command prompt. So I will change into some drive location. So I have some D drive, E drive. So this is the application. Okay, let's create one simple application. To create a simple application, we have to use the command npx, that is create next app. Npx is already available when you define. So already, if you learned React, you know what is npx. Huh? So npx create next app at the net. So at the net latest, you just configure npx create next app at the net latest. So when you configure this, now it is going to ask you few questions. So it is going to prompt and ask you few questions. What is your project named? That means what is the name you want to give for your project? That is the first thing you need to define. So what is the name you want for the project? So let's put the name as what? So React Next App. I will just use the name as React Next App. What is your project name? React Next App. That is our project name. Okay. So these are few questions you need to define. I am using React Next App. That is the name. It is the first question. Second, it is asking, would you like to use TypeScript as a language? If you people, if you already have a knowledge of TypeScript, you can use it. But because we learned React.js, so you people attended my React.js session, and there we detailedly learned about how to build a React application using TypeScript as language. We learned thoroughly complete TypeScript as a language, and we build a project also using React and TypeScript in our React classes. So if you are aware of TypeScript, you can just use TypeScript. Otherwise, you just use JavaScript as language. You can choose either yes or no. I will choose no because here many people attending this workshop may not have a complete idea of TypeScript. So if they have learned React with the TypeScript already, then they can use it. And you know what are the differences between TypeScript and JavaScript apps? People who learned React with TypeScript, they already know the difference. So for universally for all people who are attending this workshop and may not have the complete idea of TypeScript, I will choose no so that it uses JavaScript. So that means here I am using no so that I will use JavaScript. So it will use JavaScript. It is asking to use ESLint, and I hope you people know. So what is ESLint? Already you people know what is this ESLint. What is ESLint? So you already learned, no? What is this ESLint? ESLint is JavaScript language analysis tool. Na? When you learn JavaScript, you learn, right? So you all people know JavaScript rules, JavaScript related coding standards are configured by using language analysis tool to keep your JavaScript code clean and you keep your JavaScript code good without any bad techniques and bad standards. So you need to have a language analysis tool. And ESLint is a language analysis tool for JavaScript. It will alert you when you are using or violating any coding standards, especially when you are using JavaScript as a language. Every language have a language analysis tool, and ESLint is a language analysis tool for JavaScript. So I will choose yes. Okay. Next step. Would you like to use Tailwind CSS? You people, if you have knowledge of Tailwind CSS, you can implement Tailwind CSS. Otherwise, you can use Bootstrap also. You can separately install Bootstrap. You can use Bootstrap styles. Uh, if you are not aware of Tailwind CSS, I conducted a workshop on Tailwind, how to use Tailwind in general web applications. In our Naresh IT YouTube channel, you can find that workshop. You can go through it. In that, we have shown how to use Tailwind in an application. And what is Tailwind? What are the basics of Tailwind? So how, if you know Bootstrap, you can easily manage Tailwind. So the classes, the effects, everything you can easily understand. So technically, we will enable Tailwind CSS these days. Applications that are built using React or majority using Tailwind very much as CSS library. So framework, so we will better implement this. We will use Tailwind CSS, right? I choose yes for that. Would you like your code inside SRC directory? It's good to maintain all the code inside SRC directory. So it is compulsory because public contains static resources and SRC contains dynamic resources. So just say yes for this also. So we will do that. Would you like to add app router? So that is the main ability actually. Would you like to add the app router? This is very important. So I told you framework inbuilt comes with a routing mechanism. Then here we will say yes. Even if you don't choose, later you can explicitly add. But the main concept of using a framework is to have all these inbuilt features so that we can just start designing an application that can control the application flow. So better you choose yes, keep it yes. And would you like to use a turbo pack for development environment? Actually, turbo pack is not required for production. Turbo pack is required for development so that this turbo pack is going to pre-render all your pages because we learned that Next.js is going to support static site generation. So what it is going to do, server side, it is going to pre-render your pages, keep the pages ready, and it will serve the pages faster to the user interface whenever you request them. Any changes, it will fastly update through the pre-rendering mechanisms. That is the reason better to have this while developing. In the production level, you don't need this turbo pack, but at development, better to have a turbo pack. So you set up this, yes. Okay. Next, it is asking, would you like to customize and import aliases by default? That means customize and importing aliases are nothing but, so we will choose it no, because that libraries, when you learned about module systems, na, in your React.js and JavaScript, you learned module systems. What you learned about module system, you can import a library, you can use the library. If library references are very lengthy, you can keep aliasing for the library references. So that aliasing is required to shortcutly configure any library and import and use it. So it is not mandatory to use them. We will use all those libraries as it is instead of aliasing them so that we can know exactly what library we are going to use. So better you say no for this. Now what it is going to do, it is going to initialize your project. It is going to set up your project and see it is installing all the dependencies. What are the main dependencies? It is installing React, React DOM and Next. And you already know about what is React and React DOM. React is the core library for building React application. React DOM is a virtual DOM library that allows you to configure virtual DOM and render the virtual DOM into actual DOM. And the next is a framework. That means through React and React DOM, you can build a complete good user interface for your application. But to create a complete routing mechanism, create API endpoints, to create a complete full stack application that controls the flow with the state and all the routing mechanisms, then you need the support of a framework like Next. So it is additionally installing Tailwind, and you know that just we selected Tailwind as a CSS framework for our application so that we can easily use Tailwind for formatting our content and make the user interface better. And ESLint is for language analysis in JavaScript. Any issues that you face in JavaScript, it is going to report. So that is ESLint. Actually, ESLint can be individually defined. It can be individually configured. So in general JavaScript, you might have learned that ESLint. This is official ESLint. What is the problems? What is the purpose of ESLint is it is going to find and fix problems in your JavaScript code. Generally, when you learn JavaScript, you people know this, right? Because When you learn JavaScript at a high level in companies, when we are using JavaScript, we have to follow certain rules and standards. And by using this lint, it will give you the best standards and provide you all the suggestions for avoiding issues in your code. So technically, this is also installed and our application is ready now. So that means our next application is ready. So once it is ready, so we will close this application successfully created. So once application is successfully created, now you open your project folder in Visual Studio Code. So I created the project in some E drive or somewhere I created that. So in my computer, I created this in my D drive, I think. Yeah. So I created by the name, I given the name as React Next app. That means you have to open this React Next app in your VS Code. So let's open Visual Studio Code and we will go to the open folder and it is in the D drive and it is a React Next app and you select the folder and you can see the folder is ready with all the configurations defined. All the configurations defined. Now, actually, this is a basic file system generated for you. And this basic file system is nothing but majority of you people already know this file system because this is very common in your web applications. All the libraries that are installed through Node Package Manager, they are defined inside Node modules. All static resources are kept in public folder. Static resources means images or HTML content or any documents that you keep in SRC. Public. All dynamic resources are kept in SRC. Dynamic resources like JavaScript, TypeScript, all SAS, CSS, all these are kept in this. When you are linking and publishing on Git to ignore certain folders, you need to configure in Git ignore. And you installed a language analysis tool called ESLint. That means you installed a JavaScript rules library. Actually, all the rules for JavaScript that you are going to use in your project, those rules are defined in this file. So ESLint config is going to set the rules for JavaScript that you are going to use in your application. And if you violate those rules, it is going to alert you with some warnings. So you can see this is ES tool, language analysis tool. And this language analysis tool is already configured with certain functionalities. It is going to verify the logic that you write. It is going to import your JavaScript files and check the JavaScript files code is according to standards or not. If it is not, then it will report. And there is a JavaScript configuration file. This JavaScript configuration file is nothing but it will identify where the JavaScript files are present. That means it will use the folder because we said in the beginning, we keep all dynamic in SRC. The path is set to SRC. It is going to load this to SRC and it is going to compile the files that are present in SRC. So that is configured. And the next configuration file is nothing but is going to import the complete Next.js library into your application. And of course, you know, package JSON and package log JSON, they will configure your metadata of your application, what dependencies installed. I don't need to explain you what is package JSON and see. So how to run your application, how to build, how to start your application, that for that, you know that you need to observe the scripts. Scripts going to show you how to build, how to start, how to run your next application. And there is a post CSS configuration. This is required for Tailwind. So for Tailwind, we need this post configuration. Actually, it is responsible for importing the complete Tailwind library so that you can use. And you know, README is nothing but README is a help document designed by developers for developers. That is actually README. So this is the basic file system generated in your application. Now, how do you start? How do you start? How this next application starts? What it comprises of? How it is going to start? Actually, when you start the next application, what this next application is going to do is you can observe SRC folder. In SRC, you can find the app folder. So all the resources related to application are kept in that SRC app. That means whatever you want. And remember, in this app, page.js is set to be startup page. That is, it is to be startup page. Startup page, that means whatever code you defined here, it will get startup. And remember, in every module, the startup will be page.js. That means it is nothing but it acts like an index file. It acts like an index file. So that means when you create an application starts automatically with the index. So here it starts with this page.js. This page.js, you can observe that page.js is a component. And you see the component, it is a component by name home. And the home component is already having a lot of design. It is having a lot of design. So what you have to do, first run this application, then I will tell you how do you configure the application. So after configuring, after opening in Visual Studio Code, so here you need to start your next app. You need to start your next app. How do you do in the terminal? So you have to use npm run dev. You have to use the command npm run dev for development. So you can run for production or development. For production, you have to use npm run build. So for development, you have to use npm run dev. So I will start here, open the terminal and run that npm run dev. So when I run this, and you can see that it is going to start the turbo pack and application is ready. You can see so fast it is ready and it is ready to serve. And it is running currently in your port number 3000, that is localhost. Let's open this and see. When I open this, you can see in a browser, it is going to launch. It is going to launch your application and it will show you the initial screen. And from where this screen is coming, actually this screen is coming from SRC. In that SRC app, in that page.js, that is the startup page for your application. That is the startup page for your application. So what you have to do now is, if you want to customize this, then you have to customize. So what you need to do to customize, initial page. So what you have to do, go to SRC app in that page.js. That is the initial page you need to customize. And you already know React.js, and because the UI is React.js, so React.js UI comprises of what? You people know? In React.js, the user interface is built with what? In React.js, the user interface is built with components. Good. It is built with components, and components are designed using which language? Components are designed by using JSX. Good. So what you have to do, you need to create the same. You need to create the same. So what already you can see that in the React application, SRC in page.js, you can see it is a component. You can see it is a component. Export default function, it is a home component. And by default, it is starting with this whole home component. I will do one thing. Let's clean up all this what home component is returning. let's delete all this what home component is returning, and you just keep a container. You know that all the result must be in one fragment. So, and I just keep a header here. I will keep a header. Suppose I am giving some shopper like header. That means just a heading. So header have a shopper like option. Okay, let's keep this in a heading style. Shopper like this, we configured the header. Now, when I defined this, and you can observe here, so when I save this, it is going to render that and show. So it is going to render and display. And of course, you people know about how do you configure the styles and define the styles. So temporarily, I want to use style binding. I will use style. So text align as center. You know how to configure the styles. That is what the design. Okay, now what is the speciality here is we discussed that it have inbuilt routing. That means a framework is built with routes. It is configured with routes. It is already built with routes. And it is now actually using CSS. So that means Tailwind CSS. If you know Tailwind CSS, you can apply the Tailwind classes here. Suppose I given here text success. So I actually text I give as what some danger. That means you can keep red. So red, how much percent you can configure that. So I'm adding the styles like so font size, font styles. You can keep anything you want. So as of now, I just added the class, and you can see that effect is applied here. It is defined here. So if you know Tailwind, you can implement and you can configure Tailwind for this. That means you can add some border. So you added some border to so some border size. That means it is going to apply the borders. It is going to configure the border. You are applying some padding. So it is going to set some padding. So the border, the padding I am configuring here. That means it is going to use that padding. Now let's implement a simple routing mechanism inside this. So for example, what I am doing here is I'm going to set up here. So I'm going to set up a simple section area here. Okay. And I will show you a simple navigation how the routing works in this application. Suppose in this section area, I want to create some route to certain location. So let's go to app folder. Now in the app folder, I am adding some links. Like in the app folder, I will add a subfolder by name so men. Okay. Into the app folder, I will add another folder like women. Okay. Into the app folder, I will add another like kids. That means we have three different options. Okay. Now what I will do is in the public folder, I will add some images. I'm going to add some images into the public folder. So let's open in Explorer and keep some images here. In my device, I am having some images related to women fashion, kid fashion, men fashion. Some images are present. I will copy and I will keep them in our project public folder. Keep these JPG files in your public folder. Okay. Now what you have to do is you need to configure a interaction. So in kids folder, you have a new file that is page.js. And in men file, you have a new file that is page.js. So page.js is a startup for every route. And actually now what happens when you define page.js like this? Now what happens? Automatically route endpoints are created. Means route route configuration is ready now. What are the routes? The routes are nothing but you have slash kids, you have slash men, and you have slash women. This is the route already configured for your application. Now just you can access these routes, and remember every route startup file will be the page.js, the page.js. That means you need to configure that. So that means how do we define here? So we are, let's create a component now. This is the component. So export, what is it? So default, so function, and what is the function name? So function name I configured as, so this is kids. This is the kids. And what it returns a fragment. And here I defined some kids fashion. So let me first set up a simple environment here. This is kids fashion. The same thing I will use in men. I will copy this, and this is men, and it is men's fashion. We created a component for men fashion. So we have another page, and this is like women. And here we are defining like women fashion. So women fashion. And already once you set up the file system, the routes are implicitly configured. They are ready. Now you see in your application, this is the root. And when I request here slash men, then what it is going to do, it is going to get the men fashion, and it is displaying the men fashion here. It gets me the men fashion. How to create nested routes, I will tell you. First, we are just learning about the basic routes. Now I request here as women, then it is going to return as the women fashion and show. So we say like kids, then it is going to get the kids fashion and display. How to create a route, nested routes, we will discuss that. The point is important. Initially, we configured the route, and now we need a proper navigation from our home page to these routes, from the routes again back. And you want to import some components. For example, I want an image. Then by default, you can have an image component here. Next.js will provide an image component. Make sure that you import image from the next image. It is a predefined component, and this image have an src. Src comes from slash. It is kids fashion dot jpg. So, and mandatory, every image needs a width. So width is suppose 100, and height is also 100. Width and height certain pixels. So, and usually the, according to the rules, it should have an alternate text. Alternate text I will display as kids fashion. You know, alternate text will be displayed when image fails to load. So now I will copy the same. I will copy similar, and I will put this in the men fashion. I added one image, and make sure that you import image. Import image. Okay. And I'm adding, this is men fashion.jpg. Men fashion.jpg. And in woman fashion, import image. And this is also having woman fashion. Yeah, this is also having some woman fashion.jpg. But I want a proper navigation. You see the images are ready. I want a proper navigation. So I will put class some padding as 4. Okay, so the margin also 4, and it will keep margin and padding 4 for them clearly. Okay. Now we will set up here. How do we navigate? That is kids fashion. The same I will implement everywhere. So this is the men fashion. I'm adding this, and this is the kids fashion. Make sure that you are saving. So this is the kids fashion. I'm adding the basic Tailwind classes there for that. Okay. Now let's go to the main page.js. And here in page, we want to create a link. Then you can simply use a link component. And a link component is an inbuilt router link. So link you can href, and where to navigate slash, it should navigate to some men. So men fashion, it should navigate to men. That means it should navigate to men. And here we said men fashion, men fashion. The same thing you need to configure. You need to configure for all. That means this is men fashion, this is kids fashion. So this is kids fashion, this is the men fashion, and this is the women fashion. That means we are configuring the routes for them, women fashion. And you can see the links are defined. You remove and request the main, and this is the home page. I just created this temporarily. I am not using any span. I will use a span and just put a split so that just I can separate those links. And you can see I click on kid fashion, it gets to the kids fashion and shows the kids fashion. So it is showing some problem in this. So what is the routes? The route names are important. You need to configure the routes properly and define them. Kids, right? So you need to configure the routes and display them. So this kids is the route, right? It is going to get the route and display. When user clicks on this, when user clicks on kids fashion, woman fashion, it should get that woman fashion and display. Capitalization matters for the route names, what you configured and you want back. So what you do in every page, we will create a link. So let's put a paragraph here and create a link. And what is this link? Link href. So link href slash, this is nothing but it will get back to the home, get back to the home. We are copying the same into the men fashion and we are copying the same into the women fashion. That means you are creating a simple navigation in a next application. So link is not defined in certain locations. That means we are not importing. Make sure that we import link. So we import link from next link. Okay. And the same thing you need to do everywhere. Men fashion link is imported. That's fine. Kids fashion already it is imported. No issue. Now you click on home, get back to the home. You click on kids fashion, it will get to the kids and again back to the home. So it is a simple navigation in your next application. So this is a simple mechanism of how do we create a React Next application. And it is having inbuilt file-based routing. Just you need to configure the modules and navigation is ready. You can navigate. So in this, so many are there. Nested routes, how do you configure them? And how we create server-side renders. And very important, how do you use endpoints for creating an end-to-end application. A overview about how to create an end-to-end application we will see in our next session. I hope you are clear today's session. In tomorrow's session, we will discuss about how to build a end-to-end application using this. This requires complete knowledge of React to build your user interface. Now, how backend endpoints are created, how to use those endpoints, communicate with those endpoints, and build an end-to-end application in Node.js and Node or Express any backend APIs you can configure. Here, how to define the endpoints in next, I will show you that we'll see in our next session. Tomorrow, we will continue this workshop. In tomorrow's workshop, we will learn how to make an end-to-end application in Next and React. I hope you all people are clear with today's concept. You try this. If you have any doubts in tomorrow's session, after the end of the session, I will take all the doubts from you, right? This all notes I will share with you tomorrow. I will give a WhatsApp community link. You can join there. I will share all the notes related to this workshop in the coming session. Tomorrow, we will continue with this. Okay, thank you. Yeah, my React batch will start in 1 week. In coming 1 week, we will start our React batch, new batch. Yeah, we will share the WhatsApp community link in tomorrow's session so that you can get all these notes there. Right. Okay, thank you.